Shalom and welcome to the fifth and final program in the Talking Memory series, The Holocaust in Romania, Filling in the Gaps. The program today will focus on Holocaust public memory in post-communist Romania. My name is Medin Shahar, and I work at the Ghetto Fighters House as an educator and a guide, and I will be your host for today's program. I want to welcome our global audience with a special welcome, as always, to the survivors and their families that are with us today. We want to thank everyone for their support and interest in our programs. This series is in partnership with a Amir organization in Israel, the Romanian Cultural Institute in Tel Aviv, the Wilhelm Filderman Center for the Study of Jewish History in Romania, and the Elie Wiesel National Institute for Studying the Holocaust in Romania, as well as the Classrooms Without Borders, Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center, and the Rabin Chair Forum at George Washington University. This series on the Holocaust in Romania was the longest that we've ever done over the past 4 years, with 5 programs. And it actually started exactly a year ago. The ambassador of Romania in Israel, His Excellency Dr. Ghetto Ionid, as the guest speaker. He gave a presentation on the Yas pogrom in commemoration of the pogrom that took place 83 years ago on June 26, 1941. I would like to take this opportunity to mention the report of the International Commission on the Holocaust in Romania that was established in 2003 by President Ion Ionescu and chaired by Nobel laureate and vice chairman of the Yad Vashem Council, Professor Elie Wiesel. His Excellency Dr. Ghetto Ionid was also a member of the commission. I want to share a quote from the summary of that commission. The commission has concluded, together with the large majority of bona fide researchers in this field, that the Romanian authorities were the main perpetrators of this Holocaust in both its planning and implementation. This encompasses the systematic deportation and extermination of nearly all the Jews of Bessarabia and Bukovina, as well as some Jews from other parts of Romania to Transnistria, the mass killings of Romanian and local Jews in Transnistria, the massive execution of Jews during the Yas pogrom, the systematic discrimination and degradation applied to Romanian Jews during the Antonescu administration, including the expropriation of the assets, dismissal from jobs, the forced evacuation from rural areas and concentration in district capitals and camps, and the massive utilization of Jews as forced laborers under the same administration. Jews were degraded solely on account of their Jewish origin, losing the protection of the state and becoming its victims. A portion of the Roman population of Romania was also subjected to deportation and death in Transnistria. Unquote. I hope that this series gave our audience a better understanding of the Holocaust in Romania, along with the fact that we barely touched the tip of the metaphorical iceberg. Today is the last program, not only of the series, but of the season as we go on our summer break. Altogether, there were 9 programs this year from November 2023 that dealt with different aspects of the Holocaust and Holocaust commemoration. And I'm so happy that we were able to put together programs over this very difficult time in Israel. For this series, we have, in addition to our regular partners, 4 partner institutions connected to Romania, as you heard before, 2 in Israel and 2 in Romania. We've invited representatives from each institution to give the opening remarks on one of the 4 programs and share with our audience their work. Today, our first speaker, Anat Bratman-Elhalel, will also be representing the Elie Wiesel National Institute for the Study of the Holocaust. Before I give the floor to Dr. Bărbulescu, a short introduction. Dr. Bărbulescu is the senior researcher and head of the research department at the Elie Wiesel National Institute for the Study of the Holocaust in Bucharest, Romania. She is also an associate professor at the University of Bucharest Department of Jewish Studies. Her research interests include the social history of Transnistria, ghettos, forced labor of the Romanian Jews, anti-Semitism in interwar Romania, and Holocaust public memory in post-communist Romania. Dr. Bărbulescu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in these meetings. I will start with a short presentation of the institution I represent today, and then, if it is okay with you, then I will go with my presentation on representations on the Holocaust in post-communist Romania. So as Medin said, I'm representing the Elie Wiesel Institute for the Study of the Holocaust in Romania. We are based in Bucharest. We are a public institution conducting mainly 2 types of activities. We have a research department that is mainly focused on the history of the Holocaust under Romanian authorities. But of course, we also follow topics that cover the broader history of the Holocaust. And we also have an educational department that has different types of target groups. Mainly, we work with teachers, pre-university teachers and pre-university students. But we also work with public officers, with employees of the Ministry of Interior, of the Public Ministry. So we have a diverse target group. And from my perspective, the most important target group is represented by the teachers and the students, and we tried to involve them actively in our projects, because over the years we came to the conclusion that it's better to involve them directly in your project than to just present them the facts and waiting just to be interested by the topic. So mainly these are our activities. If you have questions, I will be very happy to answer them. And after I will finish my presentation, I will put our internet address in the chat. Maybe you will be interested to visit our website. So my presentation is a bit theoretical, and I will apologize beforehand. I will start by confessing that I'm not a historian. I'm a sociologist, and by my approach, at the end it will be very clear that I'm not a historian, but a sociologist. So I will start with a short fact. All historical elements regarding the Holocaust under Romanian authority were completely missing from the communist historiography. However, in 2004, the Romanian state acknowledged its responsibility for the Holocaust, assuming the conclusion of the Elie Wiesel International Commission for the Study of the Holocaust in Romania. More so, this political assuming was externalized into the public domain. We have a commemorative day for the victims of the Holocaust and a monument dedicated to the latter in downtown Bucharest. Also, we have the Elie Wiesel Institute that works as a public institution, an institution that fully participates to international organization that focus on Holocaust education and commemoration. Not less important, over the years, there were published in Romania, of course, important works in regard to the topic. These are the good news, but I will come in front of you with the bad news. However, this official assuming of our not so distant past is not shared by the majority of the Romanian population, as when we turn to the last survey on Holocaust representation, we find some unexpected results. The survey I will present it to you was conducted in late 2023 on a national representative scale. According to this research, 58% of the respondents associate the Holocaust with the extermination of the Jews during the Second World War. 22% associated with the Nazi concentration camps, and 7% with mass deportation. 4% of the respondents associate the Holocaust with the gas chambers, 2% with the deportation of the Jews to Transnistria or with the pogroms, and 1% associate the Holocaust with the policies directed against the Roma population. When the questions are put in a more explicit manner, the perception of the Holocaust shared by the Romanian population proves to be equally distorted. Thus, when they are asked to indicate the territory they associate with the Holocaust, 52% of the respondents point toward Nazi Germany, 32% to other European countries, and only 11% toward the Romanian territory. When the questions try to recover the image of those responsible, we get a similar picture. 54% of the respondents identify Germany as main responsible. Antonescu government is pointed by 31 of those responding the survey, while 1% indicate the Soviet Union, the Jews, or the Romanian people. Acknowledging this inconsistency that characterized the public memory of the Holocaust within the Romanian society, my aim today is to identify and reconstruct the social processes that explain how mnemonic how mnemonic myopia operates. Why does the Romanian society has difficulties to acknowledge the Holocaust of the Romanian Jews? More so, my aim is to unveil the strong connection that I think exists between constructing memory. I want to prove the link that I think exists between constructing memory and constructing identity as the answer to the question how we choose to remember our past and what we agree to include as part of it is determined, I think, by the answer to the question how we choose to describe us as people. To answer all these questions, I will turn toward the main patterns of historiographic socialization that could be identified within the post-communist Romanian society. And I will consider two categories of sources: the textbooks of Romanian history edited in post-communist Romania, and the main historiographical synthesis published after 1989 by well-known Romanian historians. And I will start with the textbooks. Even for the start, it must be emphasized that the Holocaust was a topic mostly missing from the communist textbooks. Romania's transition to democracy started in December 1949, but another 10 years passed before Holocaust-related issues were included in the school curricula for contemporary or Romanian history. This change occurred in 1999 with the decision of the Romanian Ministry of Education. An even more important change was made in the autumn of 2023 when a new discipline was included for the 11th grade in high school. The discipline is called the History of the Jews, the Holocaust. Now, before starting our analysis, I need to explain one more thing. Starting with 1999, Holocaust-related topics were included in school curricula. However, despite this unitary requirement, the Romanian educational system is characterized by the existence of alternative textbooks. And as a consequence, the specific content of each lesson could vary from one textbook to another. Analyzing the textbooks published over the years, I have identified 6 discursive models varying from the complete omission of the subject to a detailed description of it. You have now on the screen the 6 categories of messages found by me in the textbooks. For the first model, called named by me, the Holocaust is completely absent. Within this model, the lessons have no reference to the Romanian case. This model is found in textbooks published between 1993 and 2006. Now, the second model, Romanian as a savior of Jews. Following this model, in Romania, there was no discriminatory legislation, no camps, no pogroms, no deportations. Consequently, there are no victims. The only way to relate Romania with the Holocaust is through its recording among the countries that saved their Jews or had participated to the saving of those escaped from different geographical spaces. Consequently, considering that this is the only information offered on the Romanian case, the historical reconstruction proposed by these authors remain an obviously distorted one. The third model, discrimination without deportations. These textbooks contain several facts regarding the status of the Romanian Jews between 1938 and 1944. The information is not false, but is incomplete. Thus, in a textbook of contemporary history edited in 2000, we hear about the Iron Guard and its anti-Semitic program, about the existence of a set of discriminatory anti-Jewish laws, and about the existence, at the end of the war, of about 300,000 Jews on Romanian territory. All 3 items are true. However, the authors are not interested to explain what contributed to the anti-Semitic program of the legionary movement, or to talk about the anti-Semitic legislation implemented after January 1941. Is that not address how many Jews were living in Romania at the beginning of the war and what happened with those representing the difference? More important, from this version of history, the deportations are completely absent, and thus the implicit message is a positive one. The fourth model, deportation to camps for unnamed victims. This model takes the pattern sketched above and makes a step beyond. Thus we find again a short note on the anti-Jewish legislation, only this time the description is more detailed. It mentions Jews' dismissal from public offices. There is again a short reference to the number of the Jews living in Romania at the beginning of the war, 800,000, without mentioning how many were still alive at the end of it. And there is also made a short reference to the situation of the Jews from northern Transylvania under Hungarian authority. What is more important, a new piece of information is added to the previous scenario. The Romanian government built up camps and ordered deportations. The offered examples are historical, Vapniarka, Bogdanovka, and Dubanovka, but the omitted information is also important. Thus, we don't know where these camps were positioned, who the detainees were, and what were the reasons for their internment, what daily life was in such a camp, what was the number of those deported, and what happened to them. The fifth model, deportations without the final solution. In this case, the description of the events is more complete. Along with the discriminatory legislation being recording the pogrom from Iași, the massacres in Odessa, the mass deportations to Transnistria, and moreover, for the first time, the author talks about the total numbers of victims. The main characteristic of this discourse lies not in the more detailed description of the events, but its development on a comparative dimension. Thus, the emphasis is put either on Antonescu's decision in October 1942 to not deport the Jews from the Old Kingdom to Belzec, or on the comparative analysis of the fate of the Jews from the Old Kingdom with those from northern Transylvania. This time, the student learned that the Romanian Jews were deported, there were victims, and Antonescu's responsibility is recognized in a more or less explicit way. However, the number of victims varies greatly, and the information is not developed enough to reconstruct either the conditions in which this deportation took place or the fate of the victims. Moreover, the emphasis is not on the deportations to Transnistria, but on Antonescu's refusal to participate in the final solution on the Romanian territory. The Holocaust in Romania, discrimination, pogroms, and deportation. In this final model, the information given to the students is extensive. They learn about the anti-Semitic legislation, the pogroms in Dorohoi, Bucharest, and Iași, the deportations to Transnistria, and the massacres of the Jews from Odessa by the Romanian army, as well about the cessation of the deportation after 1933. Antonescu's position of the final solution is presented from the double perspective of ante and post-October 1942. The category of victims in this model includes also the Roma, a population also affected by the deportation policies. Regarding the number of victims, the authors follow the results of the Wiesel International Commission. The situation of the Jews from northern Transylvania is also taken into discussion, but this time the emphasis is not put on the comparison between the two cases, Antonescu versus Horthy, and consequently on the diminishing of the responsibility of the Romanian authorities. As I have already mentioned, starting with September 2023, it was included in the school curricula a new discipline for high school, History of the Jews, the Holocaust. There are now 5 approved textbooks. All we have them now with the public house and the authors, all 5 covering the same main topics: Jewish identity, the history of the Jews in Europe, starting with antiquity until modern Europe, history of the Jews in Romania with the focus both on community life, a Jewish contribution to Romania's development, and also anti-Semitic rhetoric and violence, and then starting with going to the Holocaust period, there are lessons dedicated to the Holocaust in Europe and the Holocaust in Romania, what happened with the Jewish community in the communist period, and at the end, a lesson on Holocaust denial. Let's now have a look over the historiographic synthesis edited in post-communist Romania by mainstream historians, because I wanted to see how they approach the Holocaust under Romanian authority. And I have chosen 4 names, 4 big names in Romanian historiography: Florin Constantiniu, Neagu Juvara, Dinu Giurescu, and Ioan Aurel Pop. I will say even from the start, in order to convince you that these names are important in Romanian historiography, the last one, Ioan Aurel Pop, is now the president of the Romanian Academy. Probably the most popular synthesis of the Romanian history published after 1989 was the one authored by Florin Constantiniu. An Honest History of the Romanian People is the title. The volume was firstly published in 1997 and was re-edited several times since then. Florin Constantiniu offers 100 out of the 500 pages of his work to Romania's participation to the Second World War. Within this general space, we find a half a page description of the legendary rebellion from late January 1941, another half a page description of the pogrom from Iași, and two inserts regarding the deportations to Transnistria, together summing up 11 lines. In regard to the pogrom from Iași, to get the correct picture, affirmed the authors, one needs to put it in the right context, meaning one had to consider, and I quote, the intensifying actions of the Soviet agents and the collective fear of Judeo-communists. This is the context, explains Constantiniu, of the attacks from June 29 against the Jewish population of the city. We learn nothing about the random arrests made on Iași streets, about the civilians, including here small children, killed in the same streets of Iași, or about Antonescu's order to evacuate the Jews from the city. Antonescu's regime is described as non-fascist because it wasn't backed up by a fascist party. Constantiniu accepts that Antonescu regime had an anti-Semitic component, but there are given no examples. There are no notes on the massacres from Basarabia and Bukovina, but the author accepts the reality of some 200,000 Jewish victims. Romania's position, as seen by Florin Antonescu, is the most paradoxical one. You have it now on the screen. From 1999, we have the first edition of another very popular historiographic synthesis, the volume of Neagu Juvara, a short history of the Romanians narrated to the young. Also, this volume was re-edited several times since then. Neagu Juvara proposes an even more ambiguous account of the Holocaust on Romanian territory. The responsible for the anti-Jewish legislation is the legendary movement. Nothing is said about the anti-Jewish legislation imposed by Antonescu after January 1941. However, explains Juvara, Antonescu considered that the Jewish population from Basarabia and Bukovina was favorable to the Soviet power, so he decided to deport them beyond the Dniester. Some 150,000 Jews and Roma shared this fate. Here, Juvara's position becomes really interesting. It is quite impossible, says Juvara, to evaluate the total numbers of those dead or missing. Why? Because they were in a war zone and the brutality displayed by the German army when advancing is well known. The Romanian authorities are completely missing from this scenario. Along the same line, we learned that after 1942, Antonescu changed his position in regard to the Jews, and in spite of Germany's continuous insistence to hand over the local Jews, he not only steadfastly refused, but also helped some Western and Transylvanian Jews to escape persecution. Nothing of the kind, emphasizes Juvara, happened in the neighboring Hungary, where the Jews were deported to extermination camps. In 2008, was published by the Romanian Academy, the 9th volume of the main synthesis of Romanian history published after 1989, covering the time span 1940-1947. Its author is another well-known Romanian historian, Dinu Giurescu. The author takes great care to cover the main events unfolding the fate of the Jews under Romanian authority, but fails to offer a clear-cut account of these events. If we take, for example, the pogrom from Iași, one learns that all started at the provocation of the Iron Guard members. The Jews were killed on the streets of Iași or in the police headquarters by German soldiers. Apart from those killed by the Germans, there were some killings on the streets of the city, but we are given no information in regard to the perpetrators. However, Giurescu offered his readers a list of the Romanian civilians killed while trying to save the Jews. The total number of victims of the Iași pogrom is subestimated to 2,521. When turning to the fate of the Jews from Basarabia and Bukovina in the summer of 1941, the authors choose to use minimalizing labels, raids, or summary executions when describing the massacres unfolded in these territories by the Romanian army. The massacre from Odessa is described in the same minimalizing manner, and the total number of victims is limited to 5,417. Not less important, Romania did not participate to the final solution. Not the same, says Juvara, could be said about neighboring Hungary, where the local authorities closely cooperated with the Nazis. When discussing the total number of victims, the author takes good care to present not less than 5 different countings, but fails to acknowledge his own version. The conclusion represents, in my opinion, an exercise in ambiguity. Here you have it. However, up to the end, in this volume, it is not clear who is responsible for the crimes, as the Romanian authorities are never explicitly nominalized as such, or when they are hinted, the events are presented in a minimalist manner. Turning toward my last example, a volume published by Ioana Aurel Pop, Istoria Românilor, the history of the Romanians, we find a similar ambiguous approach to Romanians' participation to the Holocaust. The author acknowledges the anti-Semitic legislation, but it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, being seen either as the expression of European practice of the time, or as the manner through which Romanian authorities tried to gain the sympathy of the German government. Ioan Antonescu had in fact Anglo-French sympathies and became Germanophile only by necessity. More so, Antonescu was the authority that dislodged the legionary movement from power, and therefore, unlike in other countries, in Romania, the pro-fascist party remained in power only 5 months. The Transnistria deportation are approached in a short paragraph. The context of the anti-Semitic and anti-Roma policies circumscribes the military collaboration between the German and Romanian army on the Eastern Front. Not less important, the anti-Semitic policies imposed by the Romanian authorities are presented in a comparative perspective. In the interior, argues Pop, the anti-Semitic policies continued and made many victims, although Romania refused to send its Jews in the German extermination camps, and in 1933-1944, in order to solve the Jewish problem, envisage their emigration to what will become the Israeli state. Consequently, all 4 mnemonic narratives acknowledge the existence of some anti-Jewish measures and also some disruptions of violence. However, the anti-Jewish legislation is mainly circumscribed to the period of the legionary state, and Antonescu is presented as the one who dislodged from power this fascist party. The pogrom from Bucharest was provoked by the Iron Guard members, and the one from Iași by the Germans or by the legionaries. Nothing is said about Antonescu's orders to evacuate the Jews from the city or about the participation of the locals to the killing of their Jewish neighbors. All 4 mnemonic narratives acknowledge the reality of the deportation to Transnistria, but responsible for those killed are the Germans and the war, for Neagu Juvara, or Romania's collaboration with the German ally on the Eastern Front, or Ioana Aurel Pop. Florin Constantiniu and Dinu Giurescu are not interested to find those responsible. Now, if I will introduce the second variable of my analysis, how the Romanian identity is constructed in the same sources, we shall find an identity narrative constructed in a homogeneous manner. The so much cherished homogeneity was constructed by the development of 3 main topics: common origin, unity and continuity, and the shared national specificity. Let's take now a short look over the analyzed historians. Florin Constantiniu, for him, the origins of the Romanian people are identified in the Daco-Roman synthesis. The second factor used to explain the ethnogenesis of the Romanians is Christianity, seen as a fundamental item in the formation of the Romanian people. Not less important, the ethnogenesis of the Romanians is already done at the end of late antiquity, and although the sources linking the 4th to the 11th century are almost completely missing, this lack of evidence doesn't point, says Constantiniu, toward discontinuity. The locals were still there, but were covered like a veil by populations coming from the east. Consequently, according to this identity narrative, we are the heirs of the Christianized Daco-Roman synthesis. Not less important, there was a continuous line stemming from these common roots. From Juvara, the cradle of the Romanian kin is Transylvania, and our ancestors are the Daco-Romans. To prove continuity, or transhistoric continuity, Juvara uses his own triad, common ancestry, territory, and language, with the emphasis put upon the latter. In the synthesis published by the Romanian Academy in 2001, the authors dwell in a lengthy manner upon the roots of the Romanian people, the origins. The roots are again Daco-Romans, but the ways these old elements are used in this 21st century synthesis are most enlightening. The particularities of the socio-historical process, meaning the Romanization, are given by the place, time, and ethnical basis on which it was grafted. From the Roman, here you have a quotation, from the Roman graft on the ethnic core of the native nations, a new unity was born. Not less important, this unity needs to be understood in linguistic and ethnic terms, and it takes the form of a spiritual habitus shared by those coming from this common stem. The migratory people have no role in the ethnogenesis of the Romanians. For Ioan Aurel Pop, there are two kinds of Romanian citizens, the Romanian citizens of Romanian nationality and the Romanian citizens of other nationalities. The Romanians of Romanian nationality were here long before the formation of the Romanian state. Following a model similar to all Latin peoples, the Romanians are grounded on two main ethnic elements, the pre-Roman autochthonous element, the Dacians, and the Latinophonic element, the Romans. Apart from these two elements, a third one, the migrationist element, should be considered, meaning the Slavs. However, in the Romanian case, says Pop, the Slavic influence was much reduced and too late, when the formation of the Romanian people was almost done. So, for Pop, the ethnic core was already defined at the arrival of the Slavic element. If we turn toward the history textbooks edited after 1989, we shall find two different ways of constructing the identity narrative ascribed to the Romanian people. The first one is circumscribed to the golden triad of the Romanian historiography, while the second goes to the Daco-Roman roots, but does not correlate it with the pair unity continuity, and by way of consequence, this identity narrative fails to identify a common essence shared by the entire people. The first model doubles the golden triad with a heroisant image of the Romanian people, while the second offers a non-heroisant reconstruction of Romanian history, and the hypostasis of the nation as a living entity is completely absent. The authors are going back to the Daco-Roman ancestors, but the hypostasis of the people as a living creature is completely absent. Now, approaching the end, how does this identity representations explain the way the Holocaust of the Romanian Jews is remembered by the Romanian society? To answer it, I think we need to consider the dialectical relation linking social identity and collective memory. Acquiring a group memory and in this way identifying with its collective past is part of any process of acquiring social identity. Those sharing the same identity model and consequently the same mnemonic framework will share what Zerubbabel calls free mnemonic associations, historical landmarks internalized through socialization which equally create our sense of belongingness. The others are regarded as outsiders because they are not part of the mnemonic narrative we share as a group, and they are not to be included within the same mnemonic narrative because of their status as outsiders. Considering these theoretical assumptions and applying to the post-communist Romanian social space, the approach to the Jewish suffering during the Second World War could be realized, in my opinion, in three ways. One, we could consider the war a national catastrophe and consequently regard the Jews, our co-citizens, as victims together with us. Two, we could dissociate from the actions of the Romanian authorities of the time and regard the Jews as victims of the Romanian state. Or three, we could regard the Jews as victims of others. The ethnocentric mindscapes specific to the Romanian historiography exclude the Jews from the community of belonging, and I will say this exclusion has consequence upon the way the Jewish suffering during the war is remembered / forgotten within the Romanian society. Given the ethnic stance specific to the Romanian identity pattern, the Jew never had the chance to really be perceived as Romanian, So he remained the radical other. As they do not really belong to the Romanian people, the Jews are not included within the historical narrative describing Romanian losses during the war. They are not really us. So when talking about the Romanian victims of the war, we won't include the Jewish victims on our list, as they are not really Romanians. The Jewish victims of the period, although Romanian citizens, are not part of our history, and consequently their memory is conveniently set aside. Equally important, a second correlation seems to exist between the historiographical discourse, which explains community in ethnocentric terms, and the distorted recollection of the Holocaust. The old triad of common roots, unity and continuity, creates in fact a historical discourse where the identity narrative ascribed to the Romanian people is constructed in terms of historical continuity. And in my opinion, here lies the problem. As it is true that the emphasis put on common roots provide the sense of belongingness, it is equally true that deriving identity from that of your ancestors is a double-edged sword, as we inherit not only our forefathers' assets, but also the liabilities associated with being their descendants, which translates it into what Zerubbabel calls guilt by geological association. Zerubbabel's conceptualization is fundamental for understanding why the Holocaust becomes, in this case, a dangerous memory, while Festinger allows us to identify how this dangerous memory is dealt with. When common belongingness is used to create a sense of community, and this community is understood in homogeneous terms, the relation between the present and the past becomes a dialectical one. Each generation is a replica of former ones, as those living today are similar with those living in former times, and by proxy, those from the past must have been just like us. Consequently, the history of each generation must remain guiltless in order not to step within the realm of what Festinger calls cognitive dissonance. Consequently, when the identity narrative ascribed to the Romanian people is constructed in terms of historical continuity, our noble origins, the inner Christian core, or our great achievements from the past, and the fate of the Jews during the Second World War become cognitions relevant to each other. They are equally part of the clusters of mnemonic narratives that legitimate the identity model ascribed to the Romanian people. Therefore, as the need of internal consistency operates between relevant cognitions, the Holocaust becomes a dangerous memory that is either discarded as irrelevant and thus forgotten, or it is reconstructed in a manner that won't disturb the special image ascribed to the Romanian nation. Returning to the Holocaust perception in 2023 Romania, the ethnocentric mindscapes used to frame reality hinders the Romanian society to approach the recent past in an objective manner. Due to the traditional placement of the Jews outside the national community, the Jewish sufferings during the war is not seen as belonging to our history. Consequently, although we are co-citizens, they are not to be regarded as victims together with us, and therefore the Holocaust is set to oblivion. On a second approach, the construction of the Romanian identity in ethnic terms and the reading of history in a continuous manner transforms the Romanian people into a transhistoric being that can't be made guilty of such a crime. In this respect, vertical homogeneity works against horizontal dissimilarity, so the Romanian authorities of the time are maintained guiltless in order not to spoil the great image ascribed to the Romanian people. By the way of consequence, if the Jews can't be remembered as victims of the Romanian state, or in their quality of our co-citizens as victims together with us, it remains a sole solution to account them as victims of others. Therefore, consonant to the ethnic stance ascribed to the Romanian identity, the Romanian society externalized this dangerous memory outside its borders and make the Germans responsible for all the death. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna, so much. Thank you again, Anna, and we will move on to our next speaker, who is Olga Stefan. And just a little bit about Olga. Olga Stefan is a researcher, journalist, filmmaker, and curator, founder of the Future of Memory transnational platform for Holocaust remembrance through art and media, and currently a PhD student in sociology at the University AI Cuza. Yes. She's the editor and author of the books The Future of Memory and Slavoviciu, 1948, Then and Now. So, Olga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ghetto Fighters House, for this wonderful presentation and for all your presentations in the past. I really enjoyed being part of some of them in the past on Romania, and I'm very happy to be here today with you. I will be speaking about my platform called The Future of Memory. Okay, so this is going to be a presentation, as I mentioned, about the future of memory. And you can see here the description while I begin to read the mission, let's say, or the motivation that triggered me to start this platform. I would like to begin with a quote by a survivor of the Transnistrian ghettos. His name is Edgar Hilsenrath. And the quote that I took from him is really the motivation for the entire project in a nutshell. The traces were still there, but time would slowly blur them and nothing would be left. So now I will begin my presentation. An avalanche of right-wing extremism, xenophobia, nationalism, racism, and anti-Semitism is once again sweeping over what we once perceived as open and democratic societies, closing in on us all, imbuing social interactions in society with ever-increasing fear and hatred of the other, an invisible and mostly imagined enemy that changes with dominant political interests. For generations, the instruments utilized to eliminate inconvenient narratives from official histories have included marginalization and complete erasure of all traces of populations that disturb the accepted mythology of constructed national identities. There are no more concrete examples of this erasure than in the aftermath of the Holocaust in Eastern Europe, and here we focus our attention on the regions of Romania, former Basarabia, and Bukovina, when despite the extermination of more than 500,000 Jews and Roma in this area during World War II, rather than commemorate these atrocities for posterity and in show of respect of the massacred, historical and political forgetting continued to bury the enormous impact of what had once been a flourishing cultural presence. Entire towns, neighborhood cemeteries whisper the absence of these former inhabitants. To counteract this tendency of erasure and to highlight the mechanisms of forgetting that are still at work here, I initiated the Future of Memory, a transnational interdisciplinary platform of Holocaust remembrance with events and exhibitions organized in cities where pogroms and deportations took place. A centralized archive of all the material produced in these exhibitions, along with future undertakings, is collected in a comprehensive website. The mission of this project is to raise awareness in the public about the countries and individual cities past, reactivating memory through contemporary art and media, connecting the past to the present, documenting the last witnesses, personalizing history through oral narratives, creating connections between people, and opening up public spaces for debate and mutual understanding. The project also functions as a model for developing a broader consciousness through action and combating increasing nationalism, anti-Semitism, and ethnic hatred while establishing links with each other through shared preoccupations. The beginning of the Future of Memory was my 2016 exhibition, Fragments of a Life, that took place in Iași over the course of a month, overlapping with the dates of the Iași pogrom. It featured personal stories, including that of my grandmother, with whom I made an eponymous video, of survivors or descendants of survivors or victims of the Iași pogrom and the impact that this violent historical event had on their destinies. In addition to the video with my grandmother, I also made a documentary with the famous Swiss artist Daniel Spöri, who was born in Galați and moved with his family to Iași, where his father was killed during the pogrom. After the Fragments of a Life exhibition and the profound impact that it had, I developed the Future of Memory. The Future of Memory implementation methodology is on this slide, and it featured art exhibitions of artists that were either victims of the Holocaust or whose art actually depicts events during the Holocaust. Most of the work that was included in these exhibitions was shown in Romania for the first time. The cities you will see soon, they include Bucharest, Oradea, Cluj, Iași, and Chișinău in Moldova. Contemporary art projects were commissioned especially for this platform, and they include performances that speak about spaces, people, and events originating in the cities where these exhibitions took place, or visual art projects that also deal with local histories. I produced a third documentary called My Illusions with survivors of the Bucharest pogrom. And alongside these art exhibitions, a very thorough archive was presented during the exhibitions with books, text, articles, and interviews with survivors. And most of the books were books that had never been introduced to the Romanian market, either because they had not been published in Romania or translated in Romanian, or that they were completely out of print, and these were rare books that might have been published right after the war. Panel discussions were also organized with survivors, 2 in number, who were invited to Romania to present their work, because maybe they were historians, for example, as Ladislaus Loeb, who we will encounter in a later slide. And so their works on the Holocaust or their personal testimonies that were presented for the first time in Romania. And in parallel, an extensive film program was carefully curated to present stories that were specific to those particular cities where the exhibitions took place. Now I'd like to present a few slides from the Bucharest exhibition that took place in 2017. The exhibition featured works by Hera Stern, and this is one of her works from the series called Memories of Romania. Marcel Janco from his series on the Holocaust. Willy Prager, a photographer that documented the Bucharest pogrom. And Leon Misosniki. So these works were presented in Romania at that time in 2017 for the first time. They had not been introduced to Romania before. This is from the exhibition itself. Our next exhibition took place during the last week of the month of May to overlap with the commemoration of the deportations from the Oradea ghetto to Auschwitz. In Oradea, we combined performance art with contemporary art and an exhibition of Jewish artists from that city that had been massacred during the Holocaust. These artists were all from the well-respected Oradea School of Painters and Modern Artists. Here we see a contemporary art installation that reflects on the Holocaust that occurred in Oradea. Here again, another contemporary art performance piece that responds to the way that memory functions. It's a piece of ice that was left in the sun to melt, and it is called To the Persistence of Memory, and it literally illustrates how our memory functions similarly, if not activated. And in the main synagogue, we hosted an exhibition, as I mentioned, of the artists that had perished during the Holocaust, all modernists from the Oradea School of Painting. And the archive as well. In Cluj, similarly, we hosted the exhibition in a former synagogue, Casa Transit, it's called. Now it's a contemporary art space. And it coincided again with the ghettoization and deportation of the Jews to Auschwitz from Cluj. And we also hosted here contemporary art responses to the history of the city of Cluj, as well as a archive with various survivors, testimonies, and other elements. in Cluj, we focused on the Kastner train story, of course, because it has a very direct link to Cluj. And here I invited Ladislaus Loeb, who is a survivor, and I mentioned him earlier, was a survivor from Cluj originally, and he was also a child on the Kastner train, saved and transported to Switzerland. And we hosted several films about Jews from Cluj, but also about the Kastner train. And this photograph is actually from the screening of that particular movie. And after the screening of this particular movie, we hosted the presentation and the discussion with Ladislaus Loeb, who came back to Cluj for the first time in the capacity of a speaker. In Iași, the exhibition that we organized there took place, of course, overlapping with the dates of the Iași pogrom. And here we hosted a piano recital of a composition by famous Romanian composer and Holocaust survivor from Iași, Anat Bratman-Elhalel. Additionally, we exhibited the artwork of another Holocaust survivor who made these paintings and drawings based on testimonies of his family and friends right after the war in 1946. Lastly, besides the film program, we also hosted, these are some photographs from the exhibition. We also hosted a game based on content in the previous exhibitions. The future of memory works with microhistories. It reclaims forgotten biographies and attempts to counter the impact of time and forgetting, both on a political and personal level. As survivors are becoming fewer and fewer, the project took it upon itself to document and record some of these personal testimonies in various forms, as texts, audio recordings, video recordings, and artistic hybrid forms. The future of memory challenges the question of national identity, how it is constructed and why, who is included and who is not, and how we remember the past while constructing this identity. We use the documentaries and books that we produce as educational material in schools, museums, universities, and other public spaces, and we collect out-of-print and unpublished autobiographical and artistic works, which we intend to digitize and make public online through our website's archive. In 2019, we published the Future of Memory book, which contains a comprehensive, all the material basically that we had exhibited and shown in 2017, and never before seen artwork that we had exhibited, but also that we had discovered in the meantime from 2017. Additionally, the book contains testimonies by survivors, by children of survivors, and the third generation grandchildren of survivors about their grandparents or parents in the case of the second generation. Also, the book contains texts by historians and fragments from different documentaries that we had made for the platform. Also that year, we organized a guided tour to places of memory in Oradea and art workshops and educational activities with high school students based on the book's content. In 2019, I made the documentary Gestures of Resistance that maybe some of you have seen so far. And if you have not, it would be wonderful if you do. It's open, as Maydeen said, until 7 o'clock in the morning. In that year, we also hosted educational activities in two cities, Mediaș and Sighetul Marmației. And we worked at 3 high schools in each city. And each high school, so these 2 cities are very multicultural cities. And in each of these cities, we chose high schools that represented the different ethnic groups that make up the population of that particular city. So, for example, in Sighetul Marmației, we worked with a Hungarian-speaking high school and with a Ukrainian-speaking high school and with a Romanian-speaking high school. In Mediaș, we also worked with a high school of German speakers. And we organized workshops in each of these high schools, different workshops in each high school, that also had their inspiration. These workshops had their inspiration in the stories and the content of the Future of Memory book. That same year, we also started the development of our website. On our website, here is several screenshots of the pages of our website. It's in English and Romanian, and one of the pages contains all of the movies, all the documentaries that we've made so far, with the exception of the Gestures of Resistance. And all of those documentaries are open for the public, and they can be seen online without any password. And I would love for you guys to go check them out. One of them is Fragments of a Life. It is the story of my grandmother. The other one is the documentary with Daniel Spöri, the artist from Iași, whose father was killed in the same death train as my great-grandfather. And the third one is My Illusions, the survivors of the Bucharest pogrom. Another page is called Archive. And on that page, I have added a bunch of material, archival material, that includes also recordings of survivors, testimonies, oral recordings, audio recordings, video recordings of survivors, but also various documents that are very important to the history of the Holocaust from eyewitnesses. One, and I took a screenshot of this one because it's an extremely important document. It's the journal of Mihail Sebastian, who, of course, he lived through the war, died very shortly after the end of the war, and he did keep a diary of that horrendous period that he was a witness to. And that's just one of the documents that's on there, but there's several others. And our intention is, as I mentioned in the beginning, to try to digitize all of the holdings of that I have for this particular initiative and make them public on this archive page. Here you can also see, for example, where Gestures of Resistance was shown during COVID and in 2019 before COVID. We had a wonderful presentation in Prague where some of the survivors that are featured in the film from Slovakia were able to join us. And unfortunately, very soon after they passed away. So it was a wonderful opportunity for us to finally have a chance to speak to them in person. In 2018, I organized a presentation of the book, the Future of Memory book, in Zurich, and I invited Ladislaus Loeb, who was at the time living in Zurich, to talk about his experiences. So this is part of the Future of Memory on the Road, where I've started taking the project to a variety of different art spaces throughout Europe, wherever I can work with partners in order to host different aspects of the project. Here we see the project being hosted in Berlin in 2017, where I brought the screenings of all of the films, but also archival material and slideshows of all of the artwork that was featured in previous manifestations of the Future of Memory. Part of our activities is also the discovery of new artists and new personalities that had been completely erased or forgotten. And one such person is the artist Laszlo Keleti that I researched for a very good period of time during COVID. And right after COVID, I was able to finally bring him out into the air and organize an exhibition of the work that he made during the interballic period and right after the war. And that was organized in Zurich. And it was a wonderful opportunity to finally show that work that had been completely forgotten in Romania. He had been an anti-fascist, an engaged anti-fascist, and a lot of his work was along the lines, very politically engaged work. Similarly, I organized an exhibition in Innsbruck called the Concentration Camp Exhibition, featuring a video that I made during my stay in Innsbruck, a video on Vapniarka and all of the, or not necessarily all, because I discovered in the meantime a lot more, but a lot of the artwork that I discovered during the course of my research that was produced in Vapniarka and by artists that were there, artists and artisans that were imprisoned there. And here we can see several artworks by one of the main artists who was actually a very famed artist before his deportation to Vapniarka. And this is an exhibition focusing on him and the video called Vapniarka, the Camp of Death. And this is the last exhibition that I was able to organize of the Future of Memory. It took place exactly 1 year ago in 2023 in Nuremberg. And here I was actually able to truly exhibit almost everything that I had accumulated over the last few years, including all of the artwork that I had discovered by Laszlo Kaleti, artwork by the artists of Vapniarka, the video, the films were screened, as well as a very let's say, rich archive of out of print and rare books that had, spoken about the Holocaust in Romania right after the war. And soon after that, starting possibly in 1948 or so, started to disappear and were no longer as readily published because, of course, the communist regime had interests to not really speak about the Holocaust publicly and not necessarily talk about the Jews as the primary victims of the Holocaust. And again, a certain level of public forgetting became the political policy of the communist regime as well. So I'd like to mention that our activities are continuing with the recording of various second generation individuals, the children of survivors, and maybe even third generation. And this has been happening in parallel to all of our other activities. And I'm still trying to get all of this material not digitized, but put on the website. And that's a project in and of itself, getting the tens and tens of testimonies that I have recorded in a viewable format and posted online. In essence, the future of memory becomes a struggle against forgetting and a public repository of memory. Thank you for your attention.
Olga, thank you so much. And you can see in the chat box, someone actually said, you haven't been rewarded honorably in Israel. Well, here we are doing a program with you, and I'm very glad that we have this opportunity, and hopefully this will be an opening to other ways of sharing the incredible work that you've been doing with the archives. Third and final speaker, as I've mentioned in every program over the last 4 programs, and I will say it again here, that for each program in the series, we have a short presentation about an artifact, document, or testimony from the Ghetto Fighters House Archive that is connected to the Holocaust in Romania. Goethe Barak gave 4 presentations that revealed remarkable archival documents and art from our collection. And today we are honored, really honored, to have as our last speaker, Anat Bratman-Elhalel, the director of the Ghetto Fighters House Historical Archives, Museum Collections, and Library. And now for just a short introduction. And by the way, the Ghetto Fighters House will be recognizing the 75 years of the archives, and hopefully we'll do talking memory programs as well. Anat, but just a short introduction about Anat. As the director of the Ghetto Fighters House Archives. She is responsible for the complete process of registration, computerization, digitization, and online accessibility of archive and library collections. And I have to say, from my experience, and I'm sure others, that our archives really is one of the most open and available archives on the Holocaust that I know. She also manages all physical aspects of the museum collections, art, film, documents, artifacts, and photography, supervising preservation processes. Anat is in charge of relations with museums, archives, and academic institutions in Israel and around the world, as well as responding to public inquiries, including historians, scholars, book publications, film producers, and the general public. She is a member of the Ghetto Fighters House Annual Holocaust Memorial Ceremony Planning Committee and a member of the Israeli delegation to IRA. Anat, the floor is yours. Oh, I forgot one thing. Sorry, Anat. I can't not mention that you have an MA in Cultural Studies from the Open University of Israel. Her MA thesis was, May the People Rise to Consecrate the Bloodshed and the Battle, the Memorial Assemblies at Kibbutz Lochamei Getaot, the Ghetto Fighters House, from 1990 to 2016. And if I'm not mistaken, it is available online. If someone wants to read, I can put the name in the chat box. It really is an excellent research. Okay, so I think I got that in. I didn't want to forget. Now, Anat, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maydeen. And it's a great idea to dedicate a program to the 75th anniversary to the archive. We'll think about it and talk about it. But in my short presentation today, I will share with you the GFH, the Ghetto Fighters House Archives project of transcribing audio and video testimonies. Among these are also testimonies of Holocaust survivors from Romania. These testimonies have been collected by the Ghetto Fighters House Archives team over the years, and the aim of this current project is to transcribe these testimonies and make them accessible online. We started this project, this transcribing project, about 2 years ago. It was initiated and funded by the Claims Conference and the Remembrance, Responsibility and Future Foundation and the German Federal Ministry of Finance. The project uses speech-text technology and AI, which was developed by the Verbit company, an Israeli company specializing in transcription and captioning technology. After the transcript was downloaded from the software, one of our archivists checked the output to make sure that the text was correct, made changes if necessary, and added some historical facts to the information given on each testimony. I believe this project represents a significant step in making these valuable materials accessible to the public, and it also enables people with special needs to access the testimonies using the transcription. At the end of the project, more than 40,000 minutes of recorded testimonies will be available via the Ghetto Fighters House Archives website, along with the transcriptions and metadata of each testimony, making it much more easier to search the database for relevant information, depending on your research questions, of course. You can search by names or places or by keywords. At this point, only Hebrew testimonies were selected for the project, but I hope that in the future we would be able to conduct the process with testimonies we have in other languages as well. As I already mentioned, this collection of testimonies includes also testimonies given by Holocaust survivors from Romania. One example is the audio testimony of Aryeh Artzi. His testimony was collected as part of a school project. The interviewer is a school student, an Israeli school student, not a professional interviewer, but the encounter between her and the Holocaust survivors is very intimate and interesting. It is easy to see that she received some guidelines from a teacher, probably, in preparation for the interview. Although she has no relevant knowledge or experience, the interview went very well and produced a chronologically informative and reliable resource. It also has another important benefit, and this is of course, the encounter itself between an Israeli school student and a Holocaust survivor. This school project was conducted in the 90s, and unfortunately, we do not have further information about it, except for the testimonies themselves, which were donated to the archive finally. We will not listen to the interview since it's in Hebrew and we are short in time, but I will say some words about the content of the interview. Aryeh speaks fluently and with confidence. He was born in Daraban. In 1941, he was 10 years old. His father was a tailor. His mother was a housekeeper, and he had one younger brother. He describes their home and the Jewish neighborhood and its inhabitants, their efforts to manage life's challenges, the different synagogues they had in town, and his daily life as a young boy before the war. When the war started, his father was taken to a forced labor camp. Aryeh depicts in details the deportation to Transnistria and the unbearable and inhuman condition they had to cope with, the tremendous efforts to survive and to stay together, the terrible helplessness they all felt, the diseases and the deaths all around them. The interviewer asked innocently if they tried to resist. And Aryeh explained with a lot of patience that why it was impossible to do so. He tells how deportees insist on keeping the mitzvot and how the children try to get food from the local farmers. Miraculously, all members of his nuclear family survived. Aryeh finishes his testimony by describing his first days in Israel, his military service, and building a new life and family in his new homeland. This is one example that is already accessible for research, and there are many others on our website, as I hope you will try to access later on. Beyond the testimonies, the Ghetto Fighters House Archives holds a large collection of items, all related to the Jewry of Romania. As shown in previous session of this series by my colleague, Greta Barak, who is in charge, among other responsibilities, on this collection, there are several categories of items portraying the Romanian Jewry, which I shall now mention only briefly. More than 3,000 photographs are in the collection. You can see 4 of them here. Up on the right, you can see members of the Chalutz movement from the pioneer training commune, what we called Kibbutz Achshara, in Ripichan. This photo was taken in May 1933. On the left, on the bottom left, you can see member of a Chalutz movement from the pioneer training Kibbutz Achshara in Timișoara. In the middle, you can see Jews rounded up at Belch ghetto in Basarabia, photographed. This photo was photographed on July 15, 1941. Some more optimistic photo you can see on the right, young residents and counselor from Ilania Youth Village in Apeldoorn, the Netherlands. Children Holocaust survivors were sent there for rehabilitation. They were all Holocaust survivors from Romania. And these are only 4 examples out of many others depicting all kinds of events and periods related to the topic we are dealing with today. Also in the collection are special albums. You can see 2 pages out of one taken from one album. actually related to the last photo I talked about. This special album was created by those children I mentioned earlier, who survived the Holocaust in Romania and were sent to rehabilitation in the Netherlands. The album was made for and dedicated to the village director, the delegate Benjamin Zussman from Kibbutz Ramat Yochanan. They gave it to him as a going away gift upon his returning to Mandate Palestine, Eretz Israel, in 1948. In the first pages, as you can see on the right, are pages with a lot of names on them, autographs. You can search for names. There are hundreds of names in the first pages of the album. The rest pages are those beautiful drawings with greetings written by the children to Benjamin Zussman before he left back to Mandate Palestine. There are again beautiful drawings, beautiful greetings written to Benjamin Zussman. Last time we heard from Greta about the testimonies collected by Herz Segal after the war. Here are two examples of testimonies written during the war. On the right, you can see the memoirs and poems written by Leopold Rauch while he was in the Mogilev Podolsky ghetto. On the left, you can see a biography written by Fanny Hendel. Her biography is one example of several biographies written by children in the Zurin camp in Transnistria. Also in the collection are material artifacts, some of them on display in the Izkor Hall, one of our main exhibitions in the museum. This typewriter in the middle was used by Siegfried Jagendorf, the head of the Judenrat in the Mogilev Podolsky ghetto, probably to type clandestine letters and requests for money and medications. The requests were sent to the leaders of the Bucharest Jewish community. Today, as was said before, we are marking the 83rd anniversary to the Yash pogrom, and you can see the memorial tablet commemorating the names of the worshippers at one of the synagogues in Yash who were massacred in the pogrom. The tablet was written by Yitzhak Benediter, who was 14 at the time. And on the left, you can see the model of the Vapniarka camp. The model was built according to the camp survivors' testimonies collected in the 70s. It was built by Avi Solomovitzi Sela, himself Vapniarka, a survivor. More than once, experts have stated the Ghetto Fighters House art collection is one of the world's most important Holocaust art collections. Among the items in this collection are also artworks depicting the Holocaust in Romania. On the upper left side, you can see a Marcellian Corps artworks, the persecution of the Jews, slaughter in the streets. On the left, on the left, you can see a Victor Aricha drawing in memory of the unknown Jewish child who perished in the Holocaust. And on the right, you can see a drawing by Shlomo Schwartz, who survived the deportation to Transnistria. Many of his drawings were donated recently to the Ghetto Fighters House art collection by the artist himself. I have to apologize. I went through these items briefly and too fast, but I wanted to share with you the vast and unique collection that we have related to the Romanian Jewry. Although our institution name might be confusing. The Ghetto Fighters House Archive collects and preserves items from different areas that were under Nazi occupation. You are more than welcome to search our online archive for relevant materials and to contact us, Greta or myself, for any questions you may have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Anat. And wherever I go, when I meet researchers, the first thing that people say is, wow, the archives. You have the best archive. It's the best known secret among researchers, Holocaust researchers. So thank you again. And if there are any questions for Anat, please feel free to add them. Greta already put up the link, how to connect to our archives, and you can go to our website, as you can see, gfh.org.il, and also look for other things as well. And so we do have a few questions, and I want to go to that quickly because it's late. And like I always say, it's always late by the time we get to the questions. But first of all, Anna, there was a question about the title of your presentation because not everyone understood the connection between, and I'm not even going to try to say it. And so if you just say a little bit about what your...
Okay, I will explain the title. So my intention was to emphasize the fact that if we decide to speak about public memory, we need to make some clear distinctions. Regarding the Romanian case, it is clear that at political level, we are the best, at least in Eastern Europe. So the Romanian state acknowledged and accepted and recognized its responsibility for the Holocaust. And this, it should be great. This is the political acknowledgement part of my title. And then I said, and mnemonic myopia in post-communist Romania. This concept, mnemonic myopia, is not mine. It belongs to Eviatar Zerubabel, who is a well-known sociologist. And he writes a lot about public memory. So my idea was that if we want to understand why more than half of my contemporaries, of my citizens, my co-citizens do not accept what happened during the Holocaust with the Romanian Jews, we need to dig deeper and to look beyond the political statements, which look great, and to see what are the other voices that define this mnemonic myopia. And my proposal for you today was to look over the textbooks published in Romania after 1989 and on the main historiographic voices in post-communist Romania. There was at least one other voice that I didn't discuss, and this was the social media, because it would have been really too much to include it in my presentation. So this is what I wanted to say. There is a discrepancy between what the state says and what the people think. And there is also a second question for me regarding...
There are a few questions. Yeah, another question is if there's a connection between what is being taught in Moldova and what is being taught in Romania, also of course, the Romanian-speaking students, but also the Russian-speaking students, if there's a correlation.
Exactly. So in Moldova, there is one textbook. The discipline is not compulsory, is optional, and the curricula follows the conclusion of the Wiesel Commission. So they follow the Wiesel report. Now, I had many trainings in Moldova with history teachers, and their position in regard to the topic depends on their educational background. If they are Romanian speakers, they frame the Holocaust in a very similar way with what I have discussed here. The Romanians were the best. There should be other explanations for what happened during the Holocaust, or why do you need to talk about the Holocaust? Why not talk about what happened with the Moldovians during the Soviet occupation? If they are Russian speakers, the Romanians were the worst. The responsibility lies on Romanian shoulders. And this is all we need to know. Both categories have sensitivities regarding the civilians participating to the massacres of the summer of 1941. So it depends a lot with who you identify with, and you never want to talk about those similar with you and accuse them of perpetrating crimes against humanity. So I think the situation is quite similar in all Eastern European countries, and the sensitivities are the same in whole Europe.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to Anna's response. I think what's also super important is to remember that a factor, probably one of the most important factors in these competing narratives, is also the Romanians' perception of themselves as direct victims of communism. So within the frame, and I don't know if it was really mentioned or discussed, but I think it's an overwhelming kind of heavy inheritance that Romanians see themselves as victims of communism to the extent that they prefer to focus all and exclusive attention to their own victimhood under communism, which they often attribute, of course, to the Jews. So this idea of the competition of narratives is extremely strong in Romania, to the extent that a lot of the anti-communists are glorified, and anti-communists are actually former fascists. So former fascists are reclaimed as the ultimate patriots because, of course, they fought communism that was brought as the ideology to oppress Romanians. But those people actually, if you start looking at them en masse, the majority of them were fascists or, iron gardists. So there's a tendency and a huge movement toward glorifying those particular people, fascists and iron gardists, as the liberators, let's say, of Romania from the communists, which of course in parlance, in like general parlance, is a code for Jews as well in a lot of circles.
I will just add one sentence. They are glorified not only because they were anti-communist, but I think mainly because they were orthodoxist. So this is a joint image. They fought against communism because they were the good guys, being the Orthodox, the real Orthodox, Christian Orthodox, I mean, of course.
I think I want to ask one question before we close the program today. I'm trying to see if there's a way, if there's like a distance between what Anna, you researched, and Olga, what you're doing now, if it's through schools, through exhibitions, through screening your movies. Is the disconnection getting smaller? Is there more openness to maybe change what's written in the textbooks in the near future?
Yes, I have this feeling. I work a lot with young people, and I really love to work with the young people. And I see a real openness for the young generation. There is a very interesting discussion regarding how the Holocaust of the Jews is seen and how the Holocaust of the Roma is seen. Here is a completely different story, maybe even more with some theoretical aspects coming from psychology. So in my experience, the Holocaust of the Jews is denied or explained. The Holocaust of the Roma is legitimate. You see, this is a very strong emphasis on how the people see the Jews as dangerous and how they see the Roma legitimate to be killed. So starting from this from this important distinction, I found that working with young generation, they have a really openness toward discussing the Holocaust of the Jews and the Roma. And this is very important because we want to have a comprehensive integration of the experience of all victims. So yes, I think it is hope, and I'm quite optimistic. It takes time to change mentalities. I was 23 when I first found out about the Holocaust of the Jews in Romania. 23, meaning in my first year at MA. Nothing in high school, nothing at the university for my BA. The first time I heard when I was 23. My parents, my grandparents, nothing. So it takes time. You need to go on.
Medine, if I may.
Yes, and I'd also,
Olga, I wanted to say something about your project. Thank you very much for your presentation. I believe that the way you are coping with the subject using contemporary art is a fantastic way to cope and to try and get the new generation to be interested in knowing more about the subject. I believe it's a wonderful way to do it, and it might create what Medine asked, a kind of to relate the young generation to the subject in a more soft way, in a way that can encourage them to go deeper and deeper. Thank you very much. It looks like a wonderful project.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. It is indeed a very complicated methodology to work with kids and students as well in this type of way, because indeed the actual content and the history behind what we're doing is missing almost in totality in the schools. So unfortunately, dealing with concepts in contemporary art, such as prejudice or racism or whatever, or marginalization, these are key terms that we kind of brought out in order to be able to function and to work with the kids, in order for them to also relate to what other people went through, the persecution that the Jews went through or the Roma went through. But another aspect that's extremely important is that unfortunately there are just no Jews left in Romania. We're talking about a very old population that lives primarily in the cities, Bucharest being, of course, the main center, and a few other cities where there's like maybe 200-300, and that's pretty much it. And as a result, there's absolutely no contact with Jews as people. So, these kids don't know what a Jew looks like. The only thing that they're confronted by is the, ideas and the myths that are promoted in the public space, in the public imaginary, in social media. And, oftentimes that Jew, as we very well know, unfortunately, is a monster that is kind of promoted on all of those networks. So these kids are, of course, brainwashed to some extent to see not only as an other, but as an evil force that permeates society, because unfortunately they just don't have any direct contact with Jewish people, as normal, ordinary folks, So this is what we're up against. We're up against the complete ignorance of what a Jewish person might be, complete ignorance of the history of everything, and then coming in to try to educate, while also, and this is very important to keep in mind, there's so many other social challenges that these kids are faced with: poverty and complete lack of infrastructure, and so many other challenges in their life. So, the idea of dealing with the Holocaust, something that happened 85 years ago, becomes an insurmountable challenge. So, these are the things, of course, that need to be kept in mind in order to really reach the kids. What is it that's going to make them feel for another person? And how do you communicate empathy through a variety of different methods and programs?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, everyone, for adding to, answering my question. And I think at this point, there are other questions, but I think at this point, it's almost 2 hours, and I'm going to stop here and say my thank yous, which is very important, no less than our questions. So first of all, I want to thank our speakers today, Dr. Anat Bărbulescu, Olga Stefan, and Anat Bratman-Elhalel, that just had this wonderful kind of conclusion to a very difficult question. It kind of reminds me of the Exodus. You have to have the 40 years in the desert. Here we're talking 80 years in the desert in order to get to that young generation that is still being influenced, as Olga said. But I believe, Anna, that you're right. We have to have hope that it can change. I also want to thank Ghetto Barak, who helped to develop and implement this series, as well as giving 4 presentations on archival material at the Ghetto Fighters House related to the Holocaust in Romania. I also want to thank all the speakers in the series for your willingness to share your knowledge with our global audience and to enlighten us with your research. I personally want to thank Yigal Cohen, the CEO of the Ghetto Fighters House, for his support and vision as we now close the 4th year of the Talking Memory International Online Series that started during COVID. And last, but not certainly least, I want to thank our audience. It is because of your support and interest that the Talking Memory Series has become what it is today. And we are looking forward to seeing you in the fall. And with that, I want to say shalom to all those that lasted till the end with us. I think you were able to get the best of the best in the end. So that's it for today. And thank you again, everyone. And please look for our emails with the recording and also for programs that will be in the fall. We're going to be working on it very soon. Shalom.